Hi folks, Matthew here with Disaster Area Designs and Alexander Pedals, doing a quick tips video today, and this one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to cover how to connect a MIDI capable pedal like this Alexander Space Force to a MIDI capable stomp box like the HX Stomp. The HX Stomp can act like your whole rig, or you can use it just like a multi-effects pedal or even a single pedal. It's very versatile. A lot of folks are using these. They're on a lot of boards, but they do have some limitations. The biggest two are the block count. In other words, the number of blocks that you can have in a patch, and the total DSP power. These only have the single DSP, so they're not capable of the sort of high-powered DSP dual path stuff of the bigger Helix or Helix LT. And so to get around that, a lot of folks have taken to combining the HX Stomp with some pedals on their board to offload some of the processing and free up resources on the HX Stomp. So in order to do that, we're going to use the Space Force as sort of a sidecar. So to get started, we're going to need a MIDI cable. So this is a 5P TRS Pro. We sell these on our site. This is the equivalent of a TRS to MIDI Type A, and this will work for most devices that take 1/4-inch MIDI, whether they're Alexander, Jackson Audio, Strymon, Revelation, Red Panda, you name it. The one exception are Chase Bliss pedals, which use a cable that looks very similar, but it's wired slightly differently. And we'll have a link in the description to those as well. So we're going to connect the DIN end, the 5-pin end, to the MIDI out on the HX Stomp. The MIDI out is the lower connector. It's the one closest to the headphone jack. And then we're going to connect the TRS side to the Space Force. And you'll see on the display of the Space Force, we get this sort of line, this bar, this is EXP, and then goes away. That's because the Alexander thinks that you plugged in an expression pedal. So we're going to tell it that it's a MIDI controller instead. So we're going to hold the menu knob down, and now it says press foot switch, and it says setup on the left and save on the right. So we're going to hit the setup button, and now we're in the setup menu. So the left knob scrolls up and down, and the right knob changes the parameter. So right now we're on the very first one. This is M jack. That's the multi-jack. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. So this is multi-jack. And if we turn this knob, you can see we have expression, foot switch, and MIDI. So we need MIDI. So we'll just leave it there. And then we'll scroll down here to channel, and we're going to change the channel away from 1. And the reason for that is the HX Stomp has its own MIDI channel. It's called the MIDI bass channel, and we just don't want to use that. We want to use anything other than that. So we're going to set this to 2, and then we're just going to hold the knob to save, and now we're good to go. So on the HX Stomp, we need to set up some MIDI commands. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on this patch. It's called Jazz Rivet. It's a JC 120 sort of preset. It sounds a little bit like this. So it's a clean chorus guitar patch, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to replace this orange reverb block, this plate reverb block, with the plate patch on the Space Force. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the menu and go to Command Center. And then we have these commands that are called instants. So they have these little lightning bolts. And that's a MIDI command that gets sent when the preset is loaded. So we're going to go to the top knob here, and we're going to select instant 1. And then under command where it says none, we're going to change that to BankPC. For MIDI channel, we're going to select 2, which is the channel that we chose for the Space Force. And then for Bank CC0 and CC32, we're going to leave those off. They're not needed on this pedal. We're going to set program to 0. That's my plate patch. And then we're going to leave wait time at 0 milliseconds. We don't want it to wait before it sends any data. We just want it to happen instantly. Now we're going to scroll across using the top knob to instant 2. And we're going to set up a MIDI CC command. That's a continuous controller or a control change. MIDI channel should be 2. Sorry, I keep tapping this with my palm, my bad. MIDI channel 2, and then we want to set the CC all the way to 102. and that's listed in the manual as the bypass command for the Space Force. Go over a page. We're going to set the value to fully up, 127. That is engaged. And then we're going to go back to view, and we're going to save that. So we'll save that. Great. Now, when we're on 9A, we're going to load the preset. So we're going to go up and back. And now you can see that we have this tight plate loaded, and we have this bypass preset. This is lit. So now this is engaged. Okay, so if we go back to our view and we listen to it, we still have the plate reverb enabled here. It sounds great. If we turn it off, no reverb, right? Well, that's because we haven't set up anywhere for this signal to get in. So we have to do a little bit of wiring now. So the next thing you're going to need are some 1/4-inch patch cables. I happen to have a selection of them here, and we're going to set this up using the effects loop jacks on the right-hand side of the HX Stomp. So over here we have these 3 jacks. So on the bottom we have send, it's stereo, and then we have left and right returns. So I have these 3. So for send, I'm going to use this pink one, and then right is red and left is blue. Okay, so send goes to the input over here, right? And then the left is blue, and the red is right. All right, so now we should be able to hear it, right? Wrong, because all we have is a reverb block. What we need to do is change this reverb block and replace that with an effects loop or send and return blocks. So you just tap the lower encoder, and now we're on the reverb list. Go left here, back to the category, and then we'll go down to send and return. Go right, and then we want stereo, send and return. And we want effects loop LR. Hit that. So now we have an effects loop, and now we have our reverb. We can do other stuff here, like if we bypass this, we can set this for trails. Trails continue, see? And we can also control the mix. Now, if you're going to control the mix, you should set your effect to fully wet. So now we have this wet. So it's fully wet here, and mix is 100% wet here, but if I roll the mix back, I get my direct signal like normal here. And now I have mixed in. So this is maybe a little more versatile by using the controls here. I also think you maybe maintain the stereo image a little bit better depending on what you have going in and coming out. So it's important to note that we are running the input of this in mono. So if you have a stereo block before this, like the 70s chorus, this is a stereo chorus, it's being collapsed down to mono to go into the effect. But the mixing that's happening, that's coming into it, is stereo. So mostly your stereo stuff will stay stereo. If it's really important to you, you can replace this with a TRS cable and then go into the menu of the Space Force and tell it, hey, I'm using stereo. You set stereo mode for stereo in. And that's pretty much it. One last little trick. The Space Force is capable of receiving MIDI clock or tap tempo from an external source. So let's use the next preset. Maybe not that one. All right, so let's use this one. This sort of heavy patch. And let's put a hard chop tremolo on it that's synced to the tempo of the pedal of the HX Stomp. So we're gonna go in the menu and we're gonna go to globals. And then what we need to do is go over to the MIDI and tempo menu, which is scroll over to the right here, the MIDI, and then MIDI bass channel, all this stuff. Go to the second page where it says HX MIDI Clock and just turn that on and just set it to MIDI. You don't need to put anything else in here, just MIDI. You can leave USB on if you want, that's fine. And now we're going to go in here, and my tremolo patch that I want is this preset 4, is this trem verb. It doesn't have a tremolo on it, but we're going to fix that. So I'm going to turn my tremolo on. Can't hear it right now. We'll set it up. Okay, so we're going to go into Command Center, and we're going to paste all commands. And now we have our, let's go back here and go down and grab these. Command Center, copy, derail, and paste. Okay, so now we have our engage and our preset set up. So let's go here, and this is preset, the preset we want is preset 4. That's going to be program 3 because this starts at 0. All right, so program 3, and we're going to save that. Save that. We go down here, it's going to turn it on, and then we'll go back to our view, and we're not going to take this reverb out. We're just going to add a block here. So, and we're going to add this, and we want send return, stereo, effects loop. There you go. So now we have this spring reverb set up, and we're going to change this spring reverb so that it's only a hard chop tremolo. And then we're going to change the division, make sure it's on quarter. So if you set the division to N clock here, that's quarter, but no MIDI clock. So we're going to set it to quarter. You know what, let's set it to eighth, that's fine. Okay, cool. And now we're going to save this, and we're just going to save it. Okay, so now it's saved. So when I load this, okay, let me add my block again. There you go, I'll save that. Okay, so I have this patch set up, so it's going da, 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 da. Now if I tap over here, you can see that the tremolo follows the master tempo, but it's doubled. And there you go. So we are now controlling the Space Force from the HX Stomp using nothing but an inexpensive MIDI cable. I hope that answers some of your questions. If you've got other ones, as in how do I do it with this other pedal or this other thing, the process is pretty similar. The main things to note are setting up your Command Center commands correctly, check your manual, and then making sure that your pedal is set to receive MIDI and it's set to the right MIDI channel. Other than that, that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward process. The HX Stomp is capable of sending 6 instants per preset. So with this kind of setup, you could load commands on 3 different pedals at the same time. And if you were to chain them together, you could use a single effects loop for those 3 pedals really easily. You can also split the effects loop on this. So if you go into the block here and you change this to mono, you have effects loop L and effects loop R. And so these two are basically split. So the TRS send becomes 2 independent sends, and then each return becomes its own return block. And then you can place those 2 blocks anywhere you want. So if you had 2 pedals that you wanted to put in your chain, as long as you're okay with them being mono, you can split the effects loop into 2 mono loops. For this particular application, I wanted to do stereo because I'm trying to essentially save some processing power by using a very inexpensive effects loop block rather than a much more expensive reverb block. So I hope that answers your questions. If there's anything else you'd like to know, please drop us a note in the comments. We've got info on all these cables down below in the description. Thanks for watching.